What on earth is going on with China's exports? Every chart I'm looking at shows a surge from 340 billion to 540 billion from December of last year to February. So the charts are showing us a 70% skyrocketing increase in just 3 months. And if you look at China's imports, it's a similar percentage increase from 220 billion to 370, more than 70%. My theory is that they are importing and exporting, trading as much as they can before the economic uncertainty really starts exploding. Because obviously when trade barriers happen, it makes trade much more expensive. So if you fill up your warehouses as much as you can, you're a little shielded from it. But there's something crazy going on. I looked at China's export growth year on year. It only says that it went up 2.3%, but that's not true if you look at the earlier chart. Same thing with imports. Year on year, it shows that China actually imported 8.4% less. And this isn't just one website. Every metric I've looked at shows this same really weird disparity, meaning someone has really fudged up the Chinese official figures for overall trade. But while all this is happening, the New York Times said the tsunami is coming. China's global exports are just getting started, and that's true. The CCP just lent $1.9 trillion to China's industry, and a lot of that is going to be automotive. In the West, industry is privatized, meaning they have to compete with a lot of people, and of course, they have to deal with a lot of the government hurdles. But China's industry doesn't have that problem. It is controlled and funded by the government, meaning they can make cars and other products very, very cheaply with the government helping them. So the overall cost of industrial production in China is a fraction of what it would be in the United States or Germany. And it's not just the United States that's setting up trade barriers against China. Everybody is, including the BRICS nations. But it doesn't matter how much you tariff these Chinese products because, again, they have the government helping them. So these firms can sell industrial products at a loss for a very long time. And while the Chinese overall quality of life has been lifted over the past 50 to 60 years, they are still a much more hardy and disciplined people, and they could endure a lot more economic hardship than any American today. And because the United States has abandoned the tenets of capitalism and broken the contract of trade agreements with dozens of nations, this has emboldened not only American competitors, but American peers to start trading more with China. And we will most likely see trade barriers between China and these other countries start to come down. This all sounds very bad for the United States and the rest of the West, but there's more. The United States is the world's largest importer, and China is still one of our largest trading partners. And look, at the same time that China's exports and imports rose, look at what happened to American imports. They jumped up $70 billion. I did not see any significant rise in exports with Canada or Mexico. I just saw this with China and the United States. So the American companies are also preparing for all of this economic uncertainty. China's currency, the yuan, hasn't been this low in over a year. In fact, over the past 7 years, the currency has only been this low on 3 other occasions, which is good for the rest of the world because cheaper Chinese currency means cheaper exports. But of course, it can't get too low because then it really harms China's ability to import. Speaking of imports, exports, and Chinese economic uncertainty, the price of oil is discouraging. China is the world's largest importer of oil, and when the price of oil is this low and stays low, it usually means that Chinese oil demand is low. And that might be because China has overproduced everything. So even though their export numbers may be higher, it's not enough. Now, exports are much more important to the Chinese economy than the United States. They have about 3.58 trillion in total for 2024. That's about 20% of their economy, or 20% of their economic output. So that's a fifth. In the US, exports are about $3.19 trillion, and our GDP is about 30 trillion. So this is close to 10% of our overall economic output, so only half as much as China's. And one way to tell if a country is exporting enough to keep their economy afloat is to see the overall change in inventories. The change of inventory also lets you know if enough goods are being consumed domestically. The most recent data with the United States change in inventories is for the entire year of 2024, and you could see it's kind of flat. It's rising a little bit, but it's flat. See this huge skyrocketing of inventories? That was COVID when nobody was buying anything. Now, I tried looking for change in inventories in China, but the only data I can get is 2023. That's the most recent. And I noticed whenever there's data that doesn't blatantly make the Chinese economy look like a shining pearl, it takes a long time for it to be released. So even if the Chinese economy has been exporting like crazy and they have all of this government-sponsored industry, they're still struggling a lot. And the United States is on a collision course with much higher prices because of the trade barriers that they've enacted. And these two economies, the largest on the planet, are playing a game of economic chicken to see who can eviscerate their own population the longest in order to win. These two countries alone, if they decided to work together, they could solve the entire world's economic problems. But right now they're doing the opposite. China's leadership cannot appear to look weak to their 1.4 billion citizens and the rest of the world. And America has dug itself a hole right now by having a trade war with even their allies. Singapore is a perfect example. We have no trade deficit with them, and they have zero tariffs against us, yet we still hit them with a 10% tariff. There is nothing reciprocal about that, and there are dozens of other countries that can say the same. And to the people who support the current plan of action against the world economy, let's just say, even if China did start this economic game of chicken, the rest of the world didn't. We did. I am the Geo Husar. Part of me is thinking that all of this with the United States and China and even the EU is just some kind of charade at this point. Thanks for watching.